kinky.
I see a lot of hate directed at game journalists online. People say they aren't good for anything, and that's just not true. Game journalists provide us with something incredibly valuable, something that is hard to come by these days, something to point and laugh at. There are many reasons why even the average gamer's perception of the gaming media has been souring over the past few years. You have people like Dean Takahashi, who has continuously shown that he has no qualifications to be speaking about video games in any kind of authoritative manner. If you're not sure who Dean is, he's the special individual that couldn't figure out how to pass the Cuphead tutorial. He's also the one who claimed that Doom Eternal is just too difficult. And of course, if you play Doom like this, it's obvious that you're going to find the game to be too difficult for you. And of course, we can't forget the classic IGN Too Much Water review of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, where the reviewer gave the game a 7.8 out of 10, and they took away points because the game had, quote, too much water. Join me in today's video where I will introduce you to our newest and most soy-filled game journalist, Nate Crowley, who claims that Jill Valentine in Resident Evil 3 is a vessel for men to live out their violence against women fantasies. Oh boy. You know that feeling you get when you're playing a game like Resident Evil? Yeah, you know the one. You're making your way through a dilapidated police station with bodies strewn about, mangled corpses, most of which are missing limbs and chunks of flesh due to the abominations lurking close by who are feasting on anyone unfortunate enough to cross their paths. You check your ammunition and you see that you only have about 6 rounds left in your Samurai Edge pistol, and you're out of herbs. You hear a crash coming from the room down the hall. The room you need to enter in order to obtain the key for the police car that sits outside. You slowly make your way down the hall towards the room. You hear a thumping and thudding growing louder. Without a doubt, there is something in that room. You reach the door and prepare yourself for what lies within, and you burst through the door, gun ready. Standing before you is a mangled and bloody being, its ankle clearly broken with the bone protruding through the skin. Through its long black hair you could make out a missing eye and deep gash on its cheek. It locks eyes with you, and it lets out a hiss. It begins shambling towards you. You steady your aim and prepare to pull the trigger, but a thought crosses your mind. Is this a female zombie? I mean, it has long hair, and I guess it kinda looks curvy. Well, it's hard to tell, it's wearing a pretty thick jacket. You desperately use your critical thinking skill, being sure not to misgender the walking abomination that is slowly making its way towards you, but it's too late. It sinks its teeth into your neck, ripping out your jugular. You fall to the ground as the creature begins to eat you alive and you drown on your own blood. But hey, at least you didn't commit violence towards a woman, right? What's that I hear you say, viewer? You're not a complete idiot? Well, of course you're not. You're watching this video after all. You aren't like Nate Crowley, the review editor over at Rock Paper Shotgun. As previously mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at the review Nate wrote for Resident Evil 3, which is titled, What I Think, Resident Evil 3. Now, I don't really have a problem with the entire review itself, although I don't necessarily agree with some of the points that he made, such as the shooting feeling great. I don't really feel that the shooting feels all that good in this game, nor did I feel it was all that great in Resident Evil 2, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Something jumped out at me in this article, and I wanted to jump off my roof headfirst into my driveway to get the memory of having read this abomination out of my head. What could be that bad, you ask? Allow me to show you. I do kind of want to flag the whole violence against women aspect of Nemesis, and of the game in general, as it's hard to deny it's a theme, or that it's presented with at least a little relish. I realize it's completely unreasonable to single out Resident Evil 3 for this when, gestures at entire history of horror genre. And in fairness, you play as trigger-happy mercenary Carlos for a good portion of the game, so you get to see loads of lingering close-ups of a man's neck getting devoured like a late-night burger too. A theme? Do you know what a theme is, Nate? Do you understand the meaning of the word theme?
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
A theme is defined as 1. The subject of a talk, a piece of writing, a person's thoughts, or an exhibition, a topic. 2. An idea that recurs in or pervades a work of art or literature. So I guess because Jill is the protagonist in the game and she gets attacked by monsters, the theme of the game is clearly violence against women. Did you also know the theme of Halo is violence against Spartans? How about in Dead Space? Did you know that the theme is about violence towards men?
You're in terrible, terrible danger.
Bad touch, stranger danger.
It's certainly not hard to deny it's a theme in the game when it's so painfully evident that it's not a theme at all. What would your proposed fix be, Nate? Should we make Jill invincible? We have to protect the Whammon after all. Don't let anyone hurt the Whammon. Or perhaps we just remove Jill from the game completely. That way we don't run the risk of a woman being harmed in a video game where zombies and monsters are running around killing everyone indiscriminately. Talk about the infantilization of women, right? No one tell Nate about Call of Duty Modern Warfare. You can play as women in that game too, and you can shoot them. Oh my god. What a horrible game. Just another way for men to assert their dominance over virtual female characters and use it as an outlet for their incel rage. Give me a fucking break, Nate. In the very same paragraph, he goes on to talk about how Carlos, the male character, is also subject to death and violence in a game. I guess there is a theme of violence against men in this game. But yeah, there were moments while playing when I just felt uncomfortable. Jill isn't too obviously a vessel for anyone's fetishes, but realistic as she is, she's clearly designed to be sexy, and spends an awful lot of time being hurled into things, slapped about, grunting in pain, being asphyxiated, and either struggling to force assailants off her or being graphically murdered by them. There was one particularly rough bit where one of the previously mentioned spider monsters strangled her with tentacles, then rammed a bigger tentacle down her neck to pump her full of parasites. Watching back through my capture footage for screenshots, I could hear myself mutter, "Not cool, man," into my headset. And it doesn't happen to Carlos. What you're actually hearing in that playback was your heavy breathing and... You deceitful deviant. Jill isn't too obviously a vessel for anyone's fetishes? Well, no shit. It may come as a surprise to you that not all women in games are there just to be eye candy. I also found it a bit odd that her attractiveness is brought up at all. Like that makes a difference? If Donna Donut over here is being slapped around, that would make it any less of an issue to you? Just because you don't think dudes are jacking it while she gets smacked around by Nemesis? And this thing with the spiders, I think says a lot more about you and your sexual preferences than it does this perceived theme that you're prattling on about, Nate. No judgment here, man. You like watching gross bugs fuck girls? I mean, to each their own, you do you. Let's talk about why it doesn't happen to Carlos, shall we? Jill is the main hero of the game. Sure, you get to spend some time as Carlos, but Jill is the star of the game. I said Jill is the star of the... We are put in her shoes. We are meant to experience what she experiences. That fear, that pain, and that suffering that she goes through should make us, as a player, feel something. The fact that you had an emotional response means the writers did something right, and you're distressed to see our heroine in a very disgusting and dangerous and potentially deadly situation. If this were done with Carlos, it may have been kind of gross, but that visceral emotional response wouldn't have been there. But judging by the tone Nate is taking here, I have to believe that the only reason why Jill is the one spending some tongue time with this bug is so someone can get their rocks off, and if that's the case, I would point you in the direction of the facehugger from Alien, which also impregnates someone by shoving a disgusting appendage down their throat. Except in Alien, it's a man, so again, I guess there's a theme of violence towards men in Alien? Now let's get back to more of Nate's interesting fetishes.
Oh my.
I wasn't even kidding on Nemesis having sleazy dom energy, by the way. Jill's ex-Supercop colleague Brad mentions Nemesis having a hard-on for her, and when Carlos is introduced while saving Jill from a mangling at the hands of old Bagfists himself, he quips that Nemesis knows what he wants and won't stop till he gets it. Don't you like that in a man? No thanks, replies Jill, he's all yours. Sleazy dom energy? This whole section of the article is steeped in projection. Now there's something very disingenuous in this paragraph. The quote Nate used here about Nemesis having a hard-on for Jill is incomplete. It's not accurate, and it's not giving the reader the full and fair view of what the quote actually is. This was done in order for Nate to prop up his already flawed and false narrative of the game's theme being violence against women, but we really can't expect all that much more out of games journalists these days, can we? So what was the full hard-on quote? Let's check it out.
You okay?
What was that thing?
Damned if I know. But right now it's got a hard-on for the only 2 stars left in town. You?
I don't believe you.
You okay?
What was that thing?
Damned if I know. But right now it's got a hard-on for the only 2 stars left in town. You and me. You and me. You and me.
Liar!
It looks like you conveniently left out Brad, including himself on that hard-on list there, Nate. But I get it. It doesn't sound as juicy when you hear the entire sentence in its full form now, does it? Did you forget that people could just look that up? Or were you just hoping that those reading your painfully boring article would belong to your same SJW echo chamber and they wouldn't want to look it up for themselves? Well, don't worry. That's why I'm here to burst your safe space bubble. I find it odd that Nate also includes the dialogue between Jill and Carlos and frames it as a negative. First off, Carlos is clearly being a smartass here, and if we're all being honest, most women prefer a persistent man who are not afraid to get what they want. Of course, I can't expect a modern male feminist to understand that concept, but I digress. Jill fires back with an equally snide and self-assured way. He's all yours. You see, Jill can take a joke. Jill can dish it out as well as she can take it. Jill does not get offended. She does not cry like a girl. Be like Jill. Don't be a Nate. These highlighted portions of this article is just yet another example of many of the backwards way of thinking of these SJW types. We get a strong female character, one who shows she is stronger than even most of the men around her, who are busy being turned into zombie chow, and yet we have a man writing an article of how she must be protected. I don't understand what it is with these social justice warrior mentalities that allows them to think that this kind of virtual signaling is not only a good idea, but that it makes sense at all. They shout, "Women are equal. Women don't need to be protected." Then we have a woman in a video game getting killed by a monster and all of a sudden it's protect the women. They need help. They're being abused. Pick your lane, Nate. Either we get women in games like this where possible harm will befall them, just as it would a male in their shoes, or we don't get women in these kinds of games at all. Which for some reason, I feel like that's more of the camp that you fall into. That, or you just want invincible goddesses that no one can relate to, in which case you can always go back and watch Captain Marvel. I'm dreading the remake of Resident Evil 5 only because I can see Nate writing an article that reads, Resident Evil 5 promotes black-on-black violence, and there'll just be this picture of Sheva shooting infected villagers. I, for one, am happy to see Jill get her time to shine in all of the remake glory. It's always a pleasure to see more of the many badass ladies of the Resident Evil series, and I hope this is just the beginning of more great things to come. Seriously, when are we getting that Code Veronica remake? And that does it for today's video. I have to say, despite how stupid most of this article was, it really did give me a good laugh. And as always, I want to know what you think about this. Do you feel that women in games like Jill are created for the male gaze just for men to live out their sick and twisted fantasies? Or do you think she's just a character in a horror game and bad things happen because it's a fucking horror game? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, if you liked the video, be sure to drop a like, and if you really want to support my channel, hit that subscribe button and share this video on social media. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @MetalGearMando, and until next time, I will see you in the next video.